Started, sir.
Yep, it's about that time. Father, thank you for this time to study your word, and thank you for this wonderful conclusion of the book of Job that we'll be getting into, Lord. And thank you for the season that I believe that we are entering into of recompense, where you restore things that were lost, things that were taken. I believe that this season is now, and I'm certainly seeing the fruit of it in my life, as I'm sure other people are as well. And we look forward to even more of that. Thank you, Father, for all that you've done and for all you're doing, and just guide us as we study and discuss your word today. In your name I pray. Amen. Okay, as we've been pushing our way through this book of Job, we're finally at the part, Job, all his friends, they've argued back and forth, they've given their responses. What's his name? Elihu kind of had the last word here. And then something very different happens. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Verse 30, or chapter 38, verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action, I command. I will question you. You make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched out the line upon it? Or on what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or who shut in the sea with the doors, when it burst out from the womb? When I made clouds its garment, and thick darkness its swaddling band, prescribed limits for it, and set bars and doors, and said, Thus far you shall come, and no further. And here shall your proud ways be stayed. Have you commanded the morning since your days began, and caused the dawn to know its place, that it might take hold of the skirts of the earth, and the wicked be shaken out of it? It is changed like clay under the seal, and its features stand out like a garment. From the wicked their light is withheld, and their uplifted arm is broken. Have you entered into the springs of the sea, or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been revealed to you, or have you seen the gates of deep darkness? Have you comprehended the expanse of the earth? Declare, if you know all this. Where is the way to the dwelling of light? And where is the place of darkness, that you may take it to its territory, and that you may discern the paths to its home? You know, for you were born then, and the number of yours is great. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow? Have you seen the storehouses of the hail, which I have reserved for the time of trouble, for the day of battle and war? What is the way to the place where the light is distributed, or where the east wind is scattered upon the earth? Who has left a channel for the torrents of rain, and a way for the thunderbolt, to bring rain on a land where no man is, on the desert in which there is no man, to satisfy the waste and desolate land, and to make the ground sprout with grass? Has the rain a father? Or who has begotten the drops of dew? From whose womb did the ice come forth? And who has given birth to the frost of heaven? The waters become hard like stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades, or loose the cords of Orion? Can you lead forth the Mazzaroth in their season? Or can you guide the bear with its children? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens? Can you establish their rule on the earth? Can you lift up your voice to the clouds, that a flood water may cover you? Can you send forth lightnings, that they may say to you, Here we are? And who has put wisdom in the inward parts, or given understanding to the mind? Who can number the clouds by wisdom, or who can tilt the waterskins of the heavens? When the dust runs into a mass, and the clods stick fast together, can you hunt the prey for the lion, or satisfy the appetite of the young lions, when they crouch in their dens, or lie in wait in their thicket? Who provides for the raven its prey, when its young ones cry out to God for help, and wander about for lack of food? So this had to have been a terrifying scene. We would imagine that uh, they've had this discussion. Job and his friends are there, gathered around, and all of a sudden a whirlwind comes out of nowhere, it would seem, and God begins speaking out the whirlwind. And this first part, this, you know, and God gives Job exactly what he wants, an opportunity to stand up and plead his case before God. But then he continues, and in some ways, the things that God is saying here match a lot of what his friends have been saying, talking about the greatness of God. Where were you when I did all this? Where were you in creation? He talked about laying the foundations of the earth, creation. Who shut in the sea with the doors when it burst out from the womb? And this may be a reference to the conclusion of the Great Flood, or just maybe talking about what keeps the sea in its place, the waters in its place. Have you commanded the morning, sunrise and sunset, light and darkness? Have you entered the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? And of course, the answer to all these questions is no, I've not been there. So it goes on. Have you entered the storehouses of snow, seen the storehouses of hail, thunder, lightning, the channel for rain, provide for that. Of course, in those days, they didn't understand a lot of, what we understand today about how nature works. There was a lot more mystery to that at that time than there is today. But even so, none of us can declare that, we were there, we did it. And then verse 31, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades or loose the cords of Orion? Can you lead forth the Mazzaroth on their season or guide the bear with his children? I'm not familiar with all of these, but I know that some of these at least, I'm pretty sure these are all references to constellations in the sky. So
I looked that up. That's what I found too.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question. Are you I wasn't aware, or maybe I'd read it and I'd forgotten. Are you aware how the stars, the way they come into the sky? Maybe you are, David. Maybe some of the rest of you are. But I hadn't thought of it for a long time. Different constellations come into the sky at different seasons.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that, or do
Yeah.
you remember that from astronomy?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty cool. That's I was kind of reading about that in reference to this passage here.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that, picture if my head is the sun and my hand is the earth. If you're on the earth, you're looking this direction, this direction towards the sun. You're obviously not going to see any stars that are on the other side, or even in the general vicinity around the sun. But then, as the Earth travels around the sun to this side, now all the stars that are over on this end here are clearly visible in the night sky. So that's something that, of course, they didn't understand. How these things were set in orbit. Set in process. Not at that time, not yet. Wouldn't discover that for a long time to come. But yeah, so
I love these last few chapters because it's such a commentary on God's creation, isn't it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And he's
it's God talking about himself, talking about himself.
It's like the way he starts out with Job. He doesn't take necessarily put an arm around him and, I'm going to tell you why you had to go through all this suffering. It's kind of a rebuke in a way.
Yeah.
Who are you to question me?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Hey, stand up and answer me. Where were
Right.
you when I did all this?
That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying.
So, and in some sense, this is similar to the rebukes that his friends gave him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there certainly was a lot of this very similar language about the majesty of God, and that God is always righteous, and frankly, we're not. Um, and thus far, God's not questioning Job's righteousness in any way. He's just telling him, you're not in a position and to question my judgment. You're not in a position to judge me or to counsel me, is really what this boils down to. So,
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
very much so, very much so. So, okay,
Shall
in
we?
chapter 39, he continues. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? And of course, this is God still speaking. Do you observe the calving of the does? Can you number the months that they fulfill? And do you know the time when they give birth? Keep in mind, for the most part, as yes, people are watching, very seldom are you able to watch. Of course, they didn't have, deer in captivity in a zoo where a zookeeper could watch them carefully. They go off to their dens and, they're pretty quick. You're not going to follow them easily. They're very adept at hiding and escaping. So, nobody knew. Nobody would witness these things. When they crouch forth, bring their offspring and deliver the young ones become strong. They grow up in the open. They go out and do not return to them. Who's left? Who has let the wild donkey go free? Who's loosed the bonds of the swift donkey? To whom I have given the arid plain for his home, and the salt land for his dwelling place. He scorns the tumult of the city. He hears not the shouts of the driver. He ranges the mountains as his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Yeah. Matt, have you ever worked with a donkey before?
On my uncle's farm, didn't have much luck with it. It was very stubborn, you know.
Yeah, that is in keeping with everything else that I've heard. They are not known for their pliability.
No. Well, and I found this in my uncle's barn when he passed away. Uh, and this animal's related. Maybe I can't remember exactly how that works. We once heard of a mule who was good to a man for 6 months just to get a good chance to kick him. And that's kind of the way a donkey is too, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think a mule is a crossbreed between, is it a donkey and a horse or a donkey and something else?
Something like that.
So
They're related though.
yeah, yeah. Um, so better temperament, I guess, than a donkey. But
How about you? Have you worked with animals, donkeys and mules and such?
no, I cannot say that I have worked with those particular animals. I've come across one before, I think, but not no real experience working with them. So more by reputation than anything else.
Wasn't that now? See, I my mind kind of goes blank here, but wasn't that the animal that Jesus rode in on a donkey?
Yeah, the colt, the foal of a donkey.
Yeah. So
So
of course, he's the creator of everything, so he wouldn't have any trouble.
right, right. Yeah. He certainly didn't have any trouble. Let's see. Okay. So is the wild ox willing to serve you? Will he spend the night at your manger? Can you bind him in the furrow with ropes, or will he harrow the valleys after you? Will you depend on him because his strength is great, and will you leave to him your labor? Do you have faith in him that he will return your grain, and gather it to your threshing floor. Obviously, you're not going to trust, particularly a wild ox. A domesticated ox you can at least harness and use as a beast of burden for tilling the soil, things of that nature. Um, but a wild oxen is going to be a lot more difficult to work with. But even a tame one, you're not going to trust him to go out and do the work by himself. Yeah, you still kind of have to work with him, guide him, you know, make sure he's going the right direction, doing what you want him to do. Okay. The wings of the ostrich wave proudly, but are they the pinions and plumage of love? For she leaves her eggs to the earth and lets them be warmed on the ground, forgetting that a foot may crush them, and that the wild beasts may trample them. She deals cruelly with her young, as if they were not hers. Though her labor be in vain, yet she has no fear, because God has made her forget wisdom, and given her no share in understanding when she rouses herself to flee.
Well,
She laughs at the horse and his rider.
I like this portion of scripture. It's kind of a maybe shows God has a sense of humor because the ostrich. I looked some of this up too. This
Mhm.
goes right along with what you'd learn about them. They don't take care of their eggs. They don't take care of their young too well. But I think then I read down here and I read in a note the ostrich. I didn't know this is faster than a horse.
Yep, yep. I don't think they have the endurance of a horse, but yeah, they're fast. So, um, that's a heck of an insult, though. If come across someone who is not exactly wise, call them an ostrich, because
Yeah,
God made her forget wisdom and given her no share in understanding.
yeah.
Okay. Do you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with a mane? Do you make him leap like the locust? His majestic snorting is terrifying. His paws in the valley, he paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons. He laughs at fear and is not dismayed. He does not turn back from the sword. Upon him rattle the quiver, the flashing spear, and the javelin. With fierceness and rage he swallows the ground. He cannot stand still at the sound of the trumpet. When the trumpet sounds, he says, "Aha!" He smells the battle from afar. He, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Is it by your... Okay. So we have the horse. Of course, they've been used for centuries as um, beasts of war. Jesus, we know, of course, that Jesus came to Jerusalem at his first coming, riding on a lowly donkey. When he comes again in Revelation, how does it describe that he is coming? He will be on a white horse. And of course, it describes the sword coming out of his mouth to devour his enemies. So horses are instruments of war. The donkey, they're stubborn, but they're not used in battle. Um,
And and I think throughout Scripture, the horse is really used right as a symbol of power and might and armies, right? Throughout the Scriptures.
as far as I know, yeah. So, and very fitting too. Okay. So is it by your understanding that the hawk soars and spreads his wings toward the south? Is it at your command that the eagle mounts up and makes his nest on high? On the rock he dwells and makes his home on the rocky crag and stronghold. From there he spies out the prey. His eyes behold it from far away. His young ones soak up blood, and where the slain are, there is he. Remember one time I was in Colorado and I was working at a house that was very close to a canyon. And just looking out, and I think it was to the south actually, but there was a an eagle that he just had his wings spread out, and he was over that canyon where that updrift was, and it was almost like he was standing still there. very barely moving at all. Before he went off and did other things. It was a really impressive sight. So, okay, so this chapter, so much more, God declaring basically who he is and his majesty, the things that he has done. So,
Yeah, first you saw it through nature in the last chapter, now it's through the creation of all the animals, right?
yeah,
And
pretty
he's
much.
questioning Job. He said, "Can you make these animals do these things?"
hmm So, and he continues on, chapter 40, verse 1. The Lord said to Job, shall a fault finder contend with the Almighty? He who argues with God, let him answer it. We remember several chapters back, Job told his friends, I wish that I could appear before God and make my case.
Mm-hmm.
So God's wanting, asking him here, okay, you got to stand up and do it. And in the presence of God in this whirlwind, um, Job changes his mind here, verse 3. Job answered the Lord and said, behold, I am of small account. What shall I answer you? I lay my hand on my mouth. I have spoken once, I will not answer twice, but I will proceed no further. Okay. But the Lord is not done. There in verse 6. And the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind again and said, dress for action like a man. I will question you. You make it known to me. Here we go again. Will you even put me in the wrong? Will you condemn me that you may be in the right? Have you an arm like God? And can you thunder with a voice like his? Adorn yourself with majesty and dignity. Clothe yourself with glory and splendor. Pour out the overflowings of your anger, and look upon everyone who is proud and debase him. Look on everyone who is proud and bring him low, and tread down the wicked where they stand. Hide them all in the dust together. Find their faces in the world below. Then I will also acknowledge to you that your own right hand can save you. So God's telling them, you go ahead and stand up, clothe yourself in glory, as I am, in majesty, you know,
Wow.
judge the world, and then I'll look at you and say, where'd it go? Then I will also acknowledge to you that your own right hand can save you. So that's a pretty powerful rebuke.
So how do you envision this? Do you think that Job was probably prostrate, shaking in fear when God was speaking? What do you think?
I would imagine so. I would imagine so. Frequently throughout Scripture, when someone has an encounter with the living God, whether um, yeah, the response is to fall over like a dead man. So,
He doesn't. I mean, it doesn't give a lot of detail of what this would look like, other than it does say God's voice was out of a whirlwind.
yeah.
So you know.
And as terrifying as that, may have, undoubtedly was, that was probably sparing him the greater terror of
Yeah.
seeing God in His glory, as it were.
Hmm.
Okay, so he's challenging Job. Can you clothe yourself in glory? Can you, judge the wicked? Can you do all this? Um, and then he goes on, verse 15. Behold, behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold his strength in his loins, and the power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like bars of iron. He is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword. For the mountains yield food for him, where all the wild beasts play. Under the lotus plants he lies, in the shelter of the reeds and in the marsh. For his shade, the lotus trees cover him. The willows of the brook surround him. Behold, if the river is turbulent, he's not frightened. He is confident, though Jordan rushes against his mouth. Can anyone take him by his eyes or pierce his nose with a snare? So, this passage, talking about behemoth, I believe, is one of the mentions of what we now call dinosaurs in the Bible. So,
Yeah, I had that. I kind of looked this up, and some commentators say it could be a hippopotamus, elephant, rhinoceros, or a dinosaur.
yeah. So the first three of those options, a hippopotamus, a rhinoceros, or an elephant, I mean, you can certainly say a lot of this description is true of them, but the only one of those that I would say, particularly where it talks about the tail being, stiff as cedar, elephants and rhinoceroses and hippos, they don't do that.
No, no,
Everything that I've seen, they just kind of dangle there.
exactly.
So, but
Literally in the Hebrew, I looked it up. It just means beasts, beast.
oh, the word behemoth.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think your idea of a dinosaur is a better one.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and yeah, you think particularly of, of course, I'm sure we've all seen Jurassic Park and, the great Brachiosaurus is, walking through the, forest, and there's a few trees that are taller than them, but not many. Um, and the tail is just extending out, enormous, and, with the power to knock trees over, smaller trees over. Magnificent creatures. So, and so you have God talking out of the whirlwind and say, "Look at this creation of mine." And he says it's the first of the works of God, and I think what he means by that, obviously, is that wouldn't have been the first thing that God created, but I think it's first in terms of um, perhaps greatest in strength. Is kind of what I'm thinking there. But in any event, God is saying that He created him just like I created you. So and what are you going to do about that? Look at him. Look at how strong he is, how great he is. Man with, even with, bows and arrows, spears, all this can't touch him. Okay.
He's kind of asking a question. If you can't tame these animals, how are you going to contend with me? Right?
Right. Yeah, I created him. You go ahead and tame him, and then come back to me, see how it works. Okay, so then chapter 41, he continues. Possibly another dinosaur. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook? Or press down his tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in his nose? Or pierce his jaw with a hook? Will he make many pleas to you? Or will he speak to you soft words? Or will he make a covenant with you to take him for your servant forever? Will you play with him as with a bird? Or will you put him on a leash for your girls? Will traders bargain over him? Will they divide him up among the merchants? Can you fill his skin with harpoons, or his head with fishing spears? Lay your hands on him. Remember the battle. You will not do it again. Behold, the hope of a man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him. No one is so fierce that he dares to stir him up. Who then is he who can stand before me? Who is first given to me that I should repay him? Whatever is under the whole heaven is mine. I will not keep silence concerning his limbs, or his mighty strength, or his goodly frame. Who can strip off his outer garment? Who would come near him with a bridle? Who can open the doors of his face? Around his teeth is terror. His back is made of rows of shields, shut up closely, as with a seal. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They're joined as one to another. They clasp each other, cannot be separated. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches, sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils come forth smoke, as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame comes forth from his mouth. In his neck abides strength, and terror dances before him. The folds of his flesh stick together, firmly cast on him and immovable. His heart is as hard as a stone, hard as a lower millstone. When he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. At the crashing, they are beside themselves. Although the sword reaches them, it does not avail, nor the spear, the dart, or the javelin. He counts iron as straw, and bronze as rotted wood. The arrow's not going to make him flee. For him, sling stones are turned to stubble. Clubs are counted as stubble. He laughs at the rattle of javelins. His underparts are sharp like potsherds. He spreads himself like a threshing sledge on the mire. He makes the deep boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. Behind him he leaves a spinning wake. One would think the deep to be white-haired. On earth there is not his like, a creature without fear. He sees everything that is high. He is king over all the sons of pride.
So, David, here's another one I looked up. And in the Hebrew, the Leviathan means folded one. And then I have a cross-reference I want to read. This kind of gives us, sheds light on what Leviathan is. Isaiah 27:1 says, "In that day the Lord with his severe sword, great and strong, will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisted serpent. And he will slay the reptile that's in the sea." So, some kind of huge snake, or I even read that it could be, well, I've been reading about these lately, it could be just a massive crocodile type creature. Like, even you're talking about dinosaurs, I think I've read that there could have been crocodiles the size, almost the size of dinosaurs. So, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The only thing that's got me intrigued here is the description of fire breathing.
Right, so could there be
Of course,
dragons? Could there be
right.
dragons?
Dragons are part of, pretty much all ancient cultures that I'm aware of. I've
Right.
not heard any culture that, you know, so it's clearly something that was here historically. Um, Science, scientists with their archaeology and digging things up, they have not discovered, or at least they've not, made known any discovery of anything that would breathe fire like this. So, uh, only thing I could figure is, these things in their belly, they have produce a lot of methane gas and, belch it out. And then, I'm not sure how it would get ignited. Maybe something like, flint in their teeth, causing it to ignite when it comes out. Um, but regardless, a lot of people look at this and think that this is mythical, proof that the Bible's not true. But again, every culture in history, or every ancient culture, has descriptions of dinosaurs. I'm sorry, not dinosaurs, dragons.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've read that too.
Yeah, so I think there's something to. I definitely think there's something to this that science just has not got on, or perhaps the spirit of Leviathan has deceived them to make sure that they don't catch on. That could be too. Um, so, and of course, that's not what God is talking about here. But you were talking about Leviathan. There are several references to a Leviathan spirit. Um, and that is something that is talked about a lot today in intercession and spiritual warfare. Um, but again, just like the behemoth or great beast, there's really nothing that anyone can do about it. Certainly not with the weapons of warfare available at their time. Um, so yeah, if you saw one of those things, you were in fear. Okay. So then we have one chapter left. So Job has heard, probably cowering before God, trembling before God, in the whirlwind as he's talking about these great and mighty things that he's done creating the earth, the majestic creatures that he's created, including these great monstrous animals that that can't even think about taming. So, moving on to chapter 42. Then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. Who is that hides counsel without knowledge? Therefore I have uttered what I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, which I did not know. Hear and I will speak. I will question you, and you make it known to me. I had heard of you by the hearing of the ear, but now my eye sees you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. So Job's in the presence of God. Doesn't exactly say what he's repenting of. Maybe just his brashness in accusing God, questioning God's judgment earlier in the book. But there's really not much. He's not guilty of the things that he had been accused of by his friends, for sure. So then God turns his attention to Job's friends. So verse 7, after the Lord spoken these words to Jacob, the Lord said to Eliphaz the Temanite, my anger burns against you and against your two friends, for you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. Now therefore, take 7 bulls and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up a burnt offering for yourselves, and my servant Job shall pray for you. I will accept his prayer, not to deal with you according to your folly. For you have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So Eliphaz the Temanite and Bildad the Shuhite and Zophar the Naamathite went and did what the Lord had told them, and the Lord accepted Job's prayer. So I may want to go back, because Job had his rebuke for those 3, but God has rebuke for those 3, but he didn't say anything about Elihu. I'm noticing. So let's see. But can you imagine this? You're standing before God, and God is there. First, he directs all his attention towards Job, and of course, Job is on his face, repents, and then he turns his direction towards you, and he's telling you that what Job said about me was right, you were wrong, and you better go make sacrifices and atone for yourself to Job, who spoke correctly. So all this time, they've been making their arguments and judging that God always judges the wicked, always, if bad things happen to you, it's because of some evil that you've done, some wickedness that you've done. And Job, God is flat out telling them, no, Job's spoken rightly about me. You have not. So, anything you want to add to that, Matt?
Well, were we talking about Job's repentance as well?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
I got I just one of the books, series of books I read are by Charles Spurgeon. Sometimes,
Mhm.
if you know that great preacher,
Oh yeah.
and he said of this, he said, Job repented of the terrible curse he pronounced upon the day of his birth. He repented of his desire to die. He repented of his complaints against and challenges to God. He repented of despair, and he repented of his darkening of wisdom by words without real knowledge, that he spoke beyond his knowledge and ability to know. I think that was a pretty good summary
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately, it doesn't tell us much more about it, but yeah.
No, he's just Spurgeon's just kind of making a guess at this. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's intriguing. Yeah, God tells him, there's repenting of, speaking about things that he doesn't know about. But then there's that, when God turns his direction towards, you know, the other three, it's, by the way, Job, who had just got done rebuking, he was speaking right about me and you were speaking wrong. So I find that very interesting. But we can be right sometimes, even though speaking without knowledge, or speaking without wisdom, I should say. Um,
Exactly. So, this book, it just kind of, the more we've read it, and the more I kind of look through it, not that I've studied it real deeply, like some things when I teach them or help teach them.
yeah.
But my question to you is, David, is this, that I kind of come up with some final thoughts is, do you suppose that, see, Job went through all this suffering, and he did do some complaining. He was complaining to his friends and questioning. Do you suppose one of the lessons of this book is, how do I want to say this? Uh, you know, is it just to sit under these kind of things that come against us and just kind of like bear them and not say anything and just come to a place in our hearts where, okay, Lord, this hurts. I don't understand, but I'm just trusting you in this. I'm not going to, you know, uh, I'm not going to express out, in anger or complaint, kind of
Right.
like I don't know if this is the right way. I'm going to just take this. What do you think about that?
I definitely think there's definitely some truth to that. The attitude with which we approach, suffering in our own lives is very important. Um, of course, nobody wants to go through it, but do we look at it as an opportunity to learn from God and to grow? Um, or do we look at it, and also Job, particularly in the earlier chapters, had a very final sense about it. He was certain that he was going to die, and he certainly wanted to. Um, but of course, that isn't how this book ends. As we're finding out. Um, so there's trust God, persevere through, and it's okay to pray and ask God to remove these things, but at the same time trust His wisdom in how these things get resolved. So,
Yeah, I wonder, he lost his whole family other than his wife.
right,
And I've had two close friends, they lost their children in the prime of their life. One was just getting out of high school, the other one's about 30. And anybody that's went through that, I lost a brother years and years ago. You don't understand it. So, does this mean that the more we complain or grumble or cry out, that kind of shows a lack of trust? What do you think? I mean, it's natural to be in pain, and it's natural to, as a person, to wonder why my child would be taken. So I'm trying to come to terms with that.
yeah, and that may be what the rebuke was about here, was the question why. It's okay to ask and please God, end this, take the suffering from me. And that is a question we always want to know why, but seldom does the answer of why bring resolution. It's when we learn to trust God and
Right.
turn to Him, not for answers per se, but in trust. And I think, of course, perfect example of this is Israel's wandering in the wilderness. Time after time after time, they grumbled and complained against Moses and against God. Um, it would have been one thing if they'd said, "Hey, Moses, we need water. Ask God to provide it for us so that we can live." Um, but that wasn't their response. It was, "Have you brought us out here to die? Was there weren't enough graves in Egypt?" So there's the attitude that we have, grumbling and complaining is definitely wrong. So
Yeah.
he does want us to endure suffering with faith, um, trusting him.
I
So
had down in my journal, you know, it's not that Job had everything restored to him and then lived happily ever after. It's that he had a deeper revelation of God, don't you think? That's
yeah,
that's one of the main themes of the whole book, I think.
yeah, he certainly did have a deeper revelation of God, encountering him, face to face, as it were, or face to whirlwind. Um, and
And I don't think he ever, he never really totally received total answers on everything.
yeah, there's no indication that he did. Maybe. Of course, we don't know who wrote the book, what his relationship to Job was. I mean, maybe it was one of the three friends that wrote it. We just don't know. Um, but so, speaking of restoring everything, it begins verse 10. The Lord restored the fortunes of Job, and we prayed for his friends. And the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had had before. Then it came to him all his brothers and sisters, all who had known him before, and ate bread with him in his house. And they showed him sympathy and comforted him for all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. And each of them gave him a piece of money and a ring of gold. The Lord blessed the latter days of Job more than his beginning, and he had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, 1,000 female donkeys, 7 sons, 3 daughters. Called the name of the first daughter Jemima, the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Keren Hapot. And in all the land there were no women so beautiful as Job's daughters. And their father gave him an inheritance among their brothers. And after this, Job lived 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons 4 generations. And Job died an old man and full of days. So that's about as close to happily ever after as you get.
Yeah, I like this. There's one translation of the one phrase here, and I've heard this before. The Lord turned the captivity of Job, because he was captive in all this trial, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really beautiful. Um, but yeah, having been really unjustly, suffered all these things at the hand of, Satan and his accusation, God restored. And, that's the hope for us. When we suffer, our response needs to be a response of faith, of trusting God. And, yeah, when we do that, ultimately He will restore us and restore, better than what we had before. Um, there are, of course, times that we suffer unto death, and of course, when we do that, then we look forward to being restored in heaven, um, and in the resurrection, far more than we had in this life. Um, but even just suffering in this life, when we recover, there is a restoration, and especially when we suffer for His name's sake. Yeah, I do believe that God provides for us. So, okay. Well, it is about the top of the hour, and looks like we finished just in the nick of time.
We sure did, and I sure appreciate you doing this, David. You did the lion's share of it. It's just a relief for me, and
Yeah,
you did a real good job. I mean, I love the way that you go through this. Um, I tend to get caught up in all the details at times, so this has been good for me.
yeah. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you all for joining. Troy, go ahead.
All right, I got a couple questions.
Okay.
Um, Really doesn't relate to our Bible study. So if anybody's willing, I have a couple questions and need some advice to stay after we finish up with the Bible study because my questions and my I'm seeking advice about does not really relate to that. So is there anybody willing to kind of hang out once we're done?
What about you, David?
Yeah, I'd be willing to.
I will too. I like, not that I have all the answers.
And I know we're all part of, part of the graduate school and all that. So anybody that wants to stay, you're more than welcome to chime in. I don't know if you want to finish or if I just want to go ahead and ask right now.
Well, I have a couple things to say, and unless other people do or David does. Anybody else? Just kind of looking forward to what we're going to do. I'm not even sure myself. I just, I need a break. David won't be here either. His schedule's changing. So I'm gonna, unless somebody's gonna come forward and do it, which I don't. I think we should take a break for the summer and come back about the middle of August and see what we're gonna do, if anything. And even when we come back, I'm not sure that I'm gonna be the one that's gonna carry this any longer. So I just feel like a lot of things in my life are changing now. So comments, questions, thoughts, anybody about it? So I'll get back to everybody or have some messages up in the group around the middle of August at a time we can meet. So to discuss what we're going to do for the fall. And that'll be about the middle of August. That's all I had to say.
Okay.
So how do we do this now? Do we want this will be recorded, I guess, if we stay on here, right? Or what do we do?
Yeah,